Alright, this is a video that I've been wanting to make for a while on the greatest winner in Big Brother history, Ty McDonald of Big Brother Canada 11. I'm just gonna go over his game and give some takes on it, so yeah, time to get in here. Starting with round 1, which is gonna last for 2 weeks because this time around there's no week 1 eviction. But it ended up playing out like a normal 2 weeks because of Amal having to leave the game, in addition to the person that got evicted this week. So yeah, literally just minutes into the game, Ty formed the Shot Callers alliance with Zach, which would go on to be a major force in early Big Brother Canada 11. They took Santina's HOH and completely ran it, and they were able to get John Michael backdoored and evicted unanimously. This was definitely a good move for the Shot Callers because John Michael told Zach to his face that he's going to go after the guys if he won HOH, which did not happen as Santina won and saved me from that Nexus event nonsense. That would be scary week before Big Brother 25 implemented it into the game. Now, I actually have to give Zach most of the credit for getting John Michael out. He was the main one that was really working Santina. But there's still things that I can credit to Ty in this week. First off, he won the POV to guarantee that the Shot Callers would get their way. Also, it was a smart play for Ty to use the POV on Anika, the person that picked him to play in the POV competition, so he could maintain the appearance of a trustworthy person and keep his options open within the house. Also, in these 2 weeks, Ty was able to get into a showmance with Claudia, and while it was tumultuous, a showmance is still a showmance, which would pay off big time for Ty later in this game. So overall, this was an amazing round for Ty. Now for week 3, on Dan S's HOH, the Shot Callers were able to get their target out in Rob. Rob was the target because they saw him getting close to some of the women and they saw Rob as a guy that could win comps for them down the line, so they just got him out of there. This was a questionable move because they were in an early game alliance with Rob and Jonathan, and this got Jonathan to lose trust in Zach and Ty. Also, something that wasn't good for Ty's game was that he and Zach were starting to get figured out for controlling last week's HOH, mainly Zach. It doesn't really affect anything for this week as Rob still went home, but it really comes into play next week. I understand the move, but I don't like it because they are getting rid of another guy and an alliance member at that. And Rob just seemed more open to working with the guys than John Michael from the previous round, so it was a questionable move, and I would have liked to see the Shot Callers smooth things over with Rob rather than evict him outright. But that's what happened. Alright, there's a lot to unpack for week 4, the week of the Lettergate scandal. So this was Kuzi's first HOH week, and she decided to nominate Santina and Vanessa, with Santina as the target. This sounds solid, and it probably would have been an alright week for Ty because even though the Shot Callers were somewhat working with Santina, in the end, Zach and Ty were the main pair. So it would have been alright to lose Santina here. But Ty wasn't prepared for what happened next. Neither was anyone else. Alright, so because Vanessa self-evicted from the game, Kuzi had to name a replacement nominee before the POV competition, and the replacement nominee was Hope. Now it's time for the scandal, and I'm not just going to explain this from Ty's perspective. This is probably the only chance that I'm going to get to talk about Big Brother Canada 11, so I'm going to explain it at large and give my takes on it when I'm done explaining it. Also, this recap will be aided by post-game interviews, just like everything else in this video, but for this Lettergate situation specifically, the edit didn't really explain it well and was more focused on picking a side rather than giving the whole story. What happened was, Hope was acting like he was homesick as a strategy, so folks would drag him along in the game. Ty talked to him and said that if he really wanted to leave the game, just tell him so he can line Hope up so it won't interfere with the flow of the game, and so it's not just coming out of nowhere and screwing the shot callers over, basically. Just let Ty know in advance so he can plan around it. That's basically what Ty was trying to say. So one day, Hope showed Ty a letter that he got from the outside world, which was later revealed to have been sent in one of his socks the day after the premiere episode aired. Hope probably showed Ty the letter to make it real to Ty, like he's trying to make Ty think that he's serious about quitting, and he asked Ty to line him up. And Ty confirmed in post-game interviews that when he saw the letter, that's when it became real, because Hope wanted to leave so bad that he's exposing that he's cheating. Also, apparently Zach saw this letter like a week before this situation, and to get this out of the way, Ty has acknowledged that seeing the letter and not reporting it is a rule break, because that can affect the game of others. But what Ty also revealed was that Rob and Jonathan knew about the letter as well. So if they wanted to kick Ty out for breaking a rule, then they'd also have to kick Hope, Zach, and Jonathan out as well, which would be ridiculous. I don't think that they can afford to lose 4 people in 1 week, especially since there's already been 2 quits. Just gotta say that and get that out of the way, just for fairness. So next came the POV competition. Because Hope volunteered to go on the block 1 week, just trying to snag a win, Zach and Ty agreed to throw the POV comp so Hope could leave with the win and the cash prize from this competition. But they didn't tell Hope that they were throwing this competition so Hope wouldn't feel like he got a Mickey Mouse win. 2020 Disney World bubble type settings. They wanted Hope to feel proud of his win so he could walk out of that door on a high note. So when Hope won the POV and decided to use it, that completely screwed the shot callers over because they threw a potentially winnable POV comp, especially since they alternated wins in the first 2 POV comps. Actually, in a post-game interview, Ty said that he was light years ahead of Hope in this competition, and the edit didn't show that. Also, the shot callers needed noms to stay the same because if the POV gets used, then Zach goes up, which eventually ended up happening when Hope used the POV after saying that he wanted to get lined up. So after this, the shot callers basically decided to expose Hope to production when they were talking to Dan S, talking about how they could get Hope kicked out for cheating, and Zach mentioned the letter. So Zach got called into the DR to talk about it and said that the reason why they didn't tell production immediately was because they thought that Hope was just this young kid that needed support. And in a post-game interview, Ty revealed that his reason for not telling production about this immediately was because he didn't want Hope to get kicked out and be a black mark on the season. They're very consistent with saying that once Hope showed them the letter, they just wanted him to get his win and get out, and that would be the end of it. So while Zach was in the DR talking about the letter, Ty went up to Hope and questioned why Hope was going around the house, saying that Ty was intimidating him, painting him as a bully. And when Zach got out of the DR, he joined in on this big argument. Then shortly after, when Hope got called to the DR to talk about this and had to go and get the letter, Ty was saying ball game because they thought that they got this guy ejected from the game. So while Big Brother production was probably examining the letter and trying to make their decision, Hope went around saying that Zach and Ty were using personal stuff to get him kicked out and framing Zach and Ty as the bad guys to Daniel, Anika, Jonathan, and even Renee. Also, Anika told this stuff to Kuzi, Claudia, and Shania. They said this stuff before and after they found out that Hope was cheating. And that was because when they found out that Hope had a letter from home, they didn't think that it was cheating. This was terrible for Ty's game because the narrative for a while was that the shot callers were in control. But this situation turned them into full-on villains and got them hated by just about everyone in the house. So about an hour later, Kuzi was telling Ty about how the shot caller's move was dirty, and when it turned into an argument, Kuzi said that she didn't know how Hope cheated, denying that the letter gave Hope an advantage. There's a couple of things wrong with that, and I'll get into it more when I'm done recapping this situation. So after this, Kuzi left the conversation and started yelling that she fears no one and she's gonna call out a dirty game when she sees one, and that started this argument with Zach. Zach was like, so hey, you're okay with cheating? And Anika said that it's not for Zach to judge. And Kuzi basically asked why Zach weaponized the letter situation. Why didn't they tell production immediately? And the conversation ended there. After this blow up, there was a Big Brother administered house meeting where Arissa told everyone everything about the letter, to which Arissa literally said that it's against the rules that they agreed to. Which means that in those little arguments where everyone ganged up on Zach and Ty and were confused and tried to argue why the letter situation wasn't cheating, it turns out that Zach and Ty were right. It's just that their opinions weren't popular because they weren't in the majority. So for the punishment, Hope couldn't vote in that week's eviction and couldn't play in the next HOH. Also, because Hope got a letter, everyone got a letter, and folks started crying with excitement, making Hope look like a hero. So because the shot callers didn't get their desired outcome, they said that they were walking. Zach tried to campaign to Shania and Claudia, but it didn't work. So Zach and Ty went into the DR to self-evict. Zach self-evicted, and Ty took some time to think about it, read his letter from his mother, and realized why he's there, and decided to stay in the game. And lastly, the eviction got canceled. That was a lot. Now it's time for my thoughts on the controversy. First off, even before the letter situation, Ty was massively screwed over by Vanessa quitting and Hope taking her place on the block. If Hope weren't on the block, then even if Hope got picked for the POV comp and still won, then at least he can be convinced by Zach and Ty to not use the POV and keep all three of them safe. But since Hope was already on the block, then he might as well use it on himself. So Hope being on this nomination block unnaturally when he wasn't supposed to really screwed the shot callers over. Now, getting into the letter situation. There was a lot of debate over who was right and who was wrong. And because the fan base already hated Zach and Ty, of course, they sided with Hope in this situation. Everyone had a role to play in this situation. Like I already said, the fact that 5 people knew about the letter and didn't report it is a confirmed rule break. But actually, I'm placing most of the blame on production. If they did their job and actually searched Hope's stuff, made sure there was no letter in there, then none of this would have happened. Also, although there were limited live feeds, they still have 24/7 cameras. Like, they should have caught this. This was a complete failure on production's part. Next in line for some blame is Hope. There was a lot of talk about Zach and Ty not reporting the letter as soon as they saw it, but really, Hope deserves more blame because he was the first person to see the letter. This looks even worse for Hope because he decided to keep an illegal item and a potential advantage for like 2 weeks without letting production know. Speaking of the letter being a potential advantage, I completely agree with how Zach and Ty felt about this and disagree with Kuzi's perspective. Even if the letter had no game information in it, having a letter from home could potentially be a big advantage emotionally and psychologically in this pressure cooker of a Big Brother game. For example, when a person is feeling down and maybe they're on the brink of quitting, reading a letter from home could get all of their energy back and get them motivated again. Even if this letter hypothetically didn't impact the game, it still had the potential to impact the game, which is why it's against the rules to have one unless they're the HOH and it's been checked by Big Brother. And it's just completely false to say that this letter had no impact on the game. Zach and Ty threw the POV because of the letter situation. That whole fallout that painted Zach and Ty as these big villains was a byproduct of this letter situation. There's no case. This letter totally impacted the game and screwed the shot callers over big time. And I've got to talk about Big Brother's punishment. Taking away Hope's vote didn't matter because Zach was a unanimous vote out of the house and Zach self-evicted anyways, and it's not like this punishment carried over to the next week, just gone. Also, Hope not getting to compete in the next HOH comp can actually be seen as an advantage because sometimes people throw comps in order to not get any blood on their hands, so there's that. But in this upcoming week specifically, there was a mystery invisible HOH that was unknown to everyone. So it was a massive advantage for Hope to guaranteed have no blood on his hands. He could still potentially have some sway, like swaying the votes in a certain direction, but no one could blame him for directly putting someone up on the block, which is definitely an advantage in the right scenario. Also, it was a disadvantage to the actual invisible HOH because it narrowed down the suspects, making it easier for them to be detected because you know for sure it's not outgoing HOH Kuzi and it's not Hope because he couldn't compete. Also, I didn't like that they gave everyone else letters because that painted Hope as such a hero, which had gameplay ramifications, meaning that once again, the letter definitely impacted the game. I have mixed feelings on whether or not Hope should have been ejected because, for one, it's not like he said a slur or hit someone, something like that. But also, had there been game information in the letter, then they'd really have to eject him to protect the integrity of the game. Also, in favor of ejecting him, maybe if Hope only held onto this letter for a day or two, maybe this could have been settled less dramatically. But he held onto this for, I believe, 2 or so weeks. He had access to an illegal item for that long, knowing that he's breaking the rules. I think that this would have at least warranted a real punishment, at least a penalty nom, something like that. But in the end, all of that to say, I'm completely on Zack and Ty's side with this. And it was unfortunate to see, but also expected when fans couldn't suspend their I hate men, I hate masculinity bias for this one instance to see that, yeah, the shot callers have a reason to feel like they got played here. Had to throw that in there because although this was mostly shot callers versus Hope, a big reason why folks were rooting against the shot callers was because Kuzi was a fan favorite and folks didn't want them to ruin her HOH. Also, Hope was playing for Kuzi in her best interest while the shot callers were playing for themselves, so there's that. So I'm disappointed that that stuff couldn't be pushed to the side to focus on the bigger issue where love them, hate them, whatever, the shot callers got robbed in broad daylight. Thief simulator settings. Getting back on topic, if Hope manipulated Zack and Ty to throw the comp and got Zack on the block in a clean manner, then he's a mastermind and deserves to win the game right there on the spot. But that's not what happened, as Hope used an illegal item to accomplish this goal. That was the big deal in all of this. The reason why I spent so much time explaining this was because this was such a big hit to Ty's game. He got screwed over by a cheating scandal, lost his #1 ally, and was vilified to the house even more, putting him at rock bottom, all on week 4 with 6 weeks left in the game. So, how is he going to win it? How is he going to dig himself out of this hole? Well, the craziness, or what I call greatness, doesn't really start in week 5. After having his reputation ruined, I give Ty credit for reconnecting with Kuzi and Claudia. This stuff comes into play later, but this wasn't able to save him from being a pretty easy target that no one would mind going up. So that's what happened, as Ty was nominated next to Dan S by Invisible HOH Santina. But he was taken off the block by Daniel C because Daniel saw Ty as a shield. Also, Daniel saw that Ty was on the bottom and that he would be loyal to the person that saved him. So they locked in and agreed not to go after each other and their person, Anika for Daniel and Claudia for Ty. And that's how Ty survived week 5. I saw all of these think pieces about how Daniel C should have let Ty go in this week when that wasn't even a guarantee. Actually, although they both only had one comp win, Dan S was seen as a slightly bigger comp threat than Ty. Also, like I said, Ty was seen as a more malleable person that would owe the crown if he was taken off the block, and the crown felt like the votes would always be there to get Ty out, while no one really knew where they stood with Dan S. So even if Ty stayed on the block prior to him getting taken off the block, all signs were pointing towards Dan S getting evicted. But I don't live for hypotheticals. I live for what actually happened. So good on Ty for not even having to worry about that and getting Daniel to use the POV on him. but this would be one of the only passes that Ty got for a while. From here on out, he's a lone wolf going up against alliances such as the Crown, which was Daniel, Anika, Kuzi, Hope, and Jonathan. Also, he had to deal with the girly pops, which was Claudia, Renee, and Shania. After this Dan S eviction, first jury member by the way, but yeah, after this, everyone except for Ty and Santina are going to be in a solidified 3-person plus alliance, so let's see how that works out for Ty. In week 6, Ty won an endurance HOH, which was much needed. Although Ty was able to repair some relationships, he still wasn't in anything solid, meaning that Ty and Santina were likely nominations had anyone else won this comp because it would ruffle the least feathers. So Ty's plan on this HOH was to nominate one of Renee and Santina next to a pawn and Hope that volunteered to go on the block, so Ty could backdoor the other in case the one on the block won the POV. This was because Renee and Santina were both mystery HOH suspects, but Ty was leaning more towards Santina being the mystery HOH. He wanted to put Santina up on the block next to Hope initially, which is something that most of the house agreed on, Santina going up. But unfortunately for Ty, like he said, Canada had other plans, as Santina was saved by the Bel Air Direct eviction protection insurance that was fan voted. Santina got completely bailed out, which was unfortunate since she wasn't good at hiding that she was the invisible HOH. No one knew for sure, but she was one of the 2 suspects, her and Renee. And the invisible HOH stuff got Santina into this heated housewide argument which got folks not to trust her. And she had a bad social game this week before a single nomination was even made. Right after the HOH comp, Santina criticized Anika for cooking some soft toast. And this turned into a big argument on the next day with Wafflegate. What happened was Santina said that Anika's waffles were tasteless and was so rude about it and started crying as if she was the victim in all of this. And this was before Santina knew that she was getting protection. It's just reckless and bad gameplay. Although fan votes are part of the game, Santina really got bailed out here like she's a 2K point guard with bailout Hall of Fame. She completely deserved to at least touch the block, as that's what her gameplay inside the house earned her this week. And to keep score, this eviction protection was only a thing for 3 weeks in the game. In week 2, when Claudia got it, she didn't need it because she was a solid player, so it didn't impact the game that much. In week 4, when Jonathan got it, no one was really targeting him anyway, so it didn't impact the game that much. This safety twist only impacted week 6 when Santina got it, in a position where everyone would have happily voted her out. That's just absurd. This really screwed over Ty's HOH because Santina was a target that everyone could agree on. Now, because of his relationships with Claudia and Kuzi and their extended relationships, that left Renee as the only person that could go on the block and not ruffle a lot of feathers. So that's what happened. Hope and Renee were initial noms, and Renee touching this block will definitely be important later in Ty's story. So for POV picks, Ty got house guest choice and picked Shania because he didn't want to pick Kuzi and show his hand to Claudia, show that he and Kuzi are tight. Also, Ty thought that he could convince Shania to not use the POV if she won. Ty thought that he could convince Shania that Renee is a detriment to her game and get her not to use the POV. Big mistake, as Shania won the POV, and after everyone told her not to use the POV, she saved Renee, drawing a line in the sand between the girly pops and the crown plus Ty. Speaking of Ty, this put him in such a bad spot because Santina is safe because of Canada. Now Renee and Shania are both safe. He's in a showmance with Claudia, so that's not the move. Out of the crown members, he's the closest with Kuzi, so she's off the table. He made a deal with Daniel, which also protected Anika, his number 1 ally. Hope was already on the block, leaving Jonathan as the only person that Ty could afford to put up on the block. And this was big for everyone because Jonathan was the most liked person in the house. I'm giving Ty credit for having good jury management with Jonathan by letting him know that he was basically forced into this move and it's all Shania and Renee's fault why he's potentially leaving. But Ty had an argument with Claudia over the POV chaos and that caused their breakup, which isn't good jury management and isn't ideal for him going forward, especially since he was adamant on keeping her this week, which contributed to why Jonathan had to go up on the block. There were barely any options. Now with that out of the way, Ty's involvement in this week ends after the POV ceremony and the house decided on the vote, to which they decided to evict Jonathan. Ty wasn't really in any alliances and he's only one vote, so I understand why he didn't have his fingerprints all over this decision. At this point, the person that left didn't matter because everyone was already somewhat against Ty anyways. He had some deals here and there, but he was expendable to most. So I credit Ty for surviving, but I don't credit him with the vote. I'm giving Shania a lot of credit for getting Jonathan evicted because of her POV win and not being scared to make a big move and draw a line in the sand. Also, Ty lost his showmance and the women started getting serious about targeting Ty, to which I was going to give Ty some credit after he put Jonathan up on the block and Shania got most of the heat, but that was short-lived as Ty eventually ended up getting some blame. And then Hope and Santina were always targeting Ty. There's no other way to spin it, just a bad week for Ty, and it all started with that Bel Air Direct safety vote. While it's good that Ty took a number away from the majority alliance, Ty actually had a little bit of inroads with Kuzi and Daniel. Ty and the Crown were decently cordial until he got forced into taking a shot at them. So ultimately, the Bel Air safety stuff really screwed Ty over. Week 7 was basically a double eviction week. So for the front end of this round, Kuzi won a trivia style HOH comp. It was a straight up quiz. Just gotta note that Ty was able to avoid this quiz because he was the outgoing HOH. I'm focusing on these quiz comps because I want to debunk a narrative about Ty's competition prowess. I'm gonna talk more about it later. Before what is about to happen, which is the Fatal Feast, I thought that I wanted to talk about Library Gate, where Hope was barricading the door for Daniel and Anika to look for a potential secret power, but he eventually caved and let everyone get into the library except for the girly pops. But that's not really a big factor in Ty's story, unlike the letter situation, so I'm not going to get into it. Now talking about Kuzi's HOH, this HOH was sort of nerfed because of the Fatal Feast making it last for about a day. Plus, they had the chain of safety. So basically, the HOH starts the list by saying the person that they want to keep safe, then that person says the name of the person that they want to keep safe, and it just keeps on going until there's 3 players left that weren't picked. Kuzi got automatic safety and the first pick. So it went Kuzi, Hope, Anika, Daniel, so the Crown looked out for each other. Then Daniel chose Shania, forcing her to pick between her girly pops, to which she chose Claudia, leaving Renee, Santina, and Ty to compete in the Fatal Feast competition to avoid being on the block, with Ty as the main target. Under pressure, Ty is going to pick up his 3rd comp win in the Fatal Feast comp and secure his safety. It was basically a skill comp. They had to put all of these candles on a chandelier and balance it so that none of them would fall off, and Ty won this in 7 minutes with 3 or 4 minutes to spare compared to Renee and Santina's times. So this put Renee and Santina on the block for eviction with 30 minutes to campaign. Ty just said that he's voting with the house, so there goes his involvement in this vote. I just wanted to say that the Crown had the votes and I didn't like them evicting a lone wolf in Santina, a shield that was targeting Ty, not them, over Renee, someone that had numbers in the girly pops. This decision to get rid of Santina and let the girly pops skate by wouldn't work out great for him. I'm just gonna say that. Now it's time for week 7, part 2, more of a traditional week-long round. On Claudia's HOH, she nominated Ty next to Hope, so another strong competitor could compete against Ty in the POV competition. These were also the noms so that if Hope stays on the block, he can't vote to keep Ty. Even after weighing the pros and cons and realizing that Hope came with allies in the crown, Claudia still wanted to get rid of Ty. So they played the POV and Ty clutched it out over Hope in a narrow win. So this is good for Ty because it forced Claudia to take a shot at the crown. And with this came chaos within the crown, with Kuzi campaigning against Daniel, trying to claim that the safety chain stuff and Shania and Claudia getting saved was all her plan, not Daniel's, the guy that actually saved Shania with the safety chain. Not only was it unsuccessful as Kuzi ended up on the block next to Hope, this caused Daniel and Anika to turn on Kuzi and get annoyed with her, which was huge for the landscape of the game. For weeks, it seemed like Kuzi was the favorite to win the game, and even in the episode, the jury of Dan S., Jonathan, and Santina were rooting for Kuzi. Even when Hope got evicted next to Kuzi, on the way out, he said that he was rooting for Kuzi. Although Daniel and Anika were only 2 votes, they could still go into the jury house and give their take on Kuzi's game. But also, while in the game, because they turned on Kuzi, then Kuzi lost that protection that she was projected to have deep into the game, which really increased the winning chances for not just Ty, but everyone. Next is week 8, and it's a standard double eviction week, unlike the Fatal Feast. This is where Ty's game got really good. Renee won the HOH comp, and it was a straight up quiz about stuff that happened in the game. Ty actually went 6 for 7 on the questions. It's just that Renee was otherworldly and didn't miss, coming in with that Stephen Curry efficiency. Just gotta document this stuff because Ty being bad at mental comps was a big narrative surrounding his game, so I gotta see if it holds up. Alright, now, I said that Ty nominating Renee would come into play later, and this is how. If Ty got his way without Canada's vote, then Renee wouldn't have touched the block, at least initially. In Renee's nomination speech, Renee said that Ty is a comp beast, so there's that good chance that he touches the block anyways, but she also used Ty putting her up on the block as justification to put Ty up on the block. Something that, like I said, was not Ty's original plan, and if it were a normal week, Ty would have more options to work with. Like I said, he was derailed from his original plan and completely screwed over by Canada's vote, which led to the position that he's in right now. Beside him on the block was Anika, but Ty was the target for this week. But since he's a comp beast, then he's going to win the POV, giving him his 5th competition win. Ball game. It was a puzzle comp where they had to go through some rooms, find their puzzle pieces, and assemble a puzzle. But there were temptations added in, like puppies, money, family, stuff made to distract them from the competition. Although I can't say that Ty didn't fold, I can say that everyone else folded more than him. He just took a quick 6-second hug with his mother and got back to business. Just stupidly locked in like his name was Jimmy Butler. And this locked in mindset basically ended up winning him the comp, as Daniel spent 10 seconds with his loved one and their ending times were separated by an eerie 4 seconds. So Ty is going to take himself off the block, and Renee is going to nominate Kuzi next to Anika, which led to Kuzi's eviction. Just want to say that it's ironic how Kuzi's been saying that Renee sucks at comps, always coming in dead last, just to get sniped out of the game on her HOH. But anyways, this is amazing for Ty. First off, this gets rid of a big threat to win the game because the jury house was so pro Kuzi at this point. Now Ty is losing his #1 ally here, as the girly pops were a thing and Daniel and Anika separated from Kuzi, leaving Kuzi with Ty. But she really wanted to work with Ty this week, move forward in the game with him, and take him to final 2. So although Kuzi got evicted this week, I gotta give Ty some credit for making someone want to get on the Ty train. Ty was the only one that was really trying to talk any game with Kuzi, and that really paid off for him. One reason was because, as revealed in post-game interviews, when Kuzi was leaving, she whispered to Renee and Anika to work with Ty. So she's fighting for Ty inside of the house. Then, after eviction, Kuzi went to the jury house very bitter at the girly pops, Anika and Daniel, and only wanted to see Tai win. This is important because the jury house was a Kuzi fan club, and the most influential person in the game in Kuzi was going to the jury to advocate for Tai. And it's just amazing because earlier in the game, on Kuzi's first HOH, that Lettergate Zach self-eviction week, Kuzi said that she would call out dirty games like Zach and Ty's, and was one of the main ones that was upset with Tai. Now she's going to the jury house rooting for him. That's some amazing jury management, and it's just amazing how Tai was able to repair that relationship. Tai is starting to set up his winning game right now, but he's got to make it through the double eviction. It's usually an amazing chance to snipe a big target out of the game because the comps are faster, adding some more pressure to them. Also, with only a few minutes to talk, there's basically no time to talk someone out of a decision like there would be if there was a whole week of gameplay. So if a big target is on the block post POV ceremony, then it's basically wraps. Up to this point, this is the biggest and most important round in Ty's game, so he's really got to come up clutch. So Claudia won the week 8 double eviction HOH, and since I mentioned when Ty aced the quiz comp, I'm also going to say when he flunked one. He went 3 for 7 in the murder mystery quiz competition, tying him with Shania for the worst score. Daniel and Anika weren't much better either, only managing to go 4 for 7. Actually, if it were an actual test, then Claudia was the only one that got a passing grade, going 5 for 7. But this won't be the last quiz comp. Ty still has a chance to grab a win. So yeah, Claudia wins HOH, which was a slam dunk for the girly pops. Just nominate Ty next to Daniel or Anika. Ty wins, put the other one up. Anika or Daniel win, then just put the other one up next to Ty. You're only in a tough situation if, say, Anika's off the block and uses the POV to get Daniel off the block, or vice versa. Then you have to nominate a girly pop next to Ty, and Anika and Daniel would decide what happens. But that had such a low chance of happening. The girly pops had it made and should have been safe headed into the final 5 with a 3-2 advantage. You literally can't lose. But Claudia decided to nominate Daniel next to Anika, leaving Ty off of the block. This was because Claudia wanted a final 3 with her, Ty, and Renee, and they were working on solidifying that. And in return for not having to worry about touching the block in the double, Ty agreed to vote Claudia's way if she had to put Shania up on the block, meaning that Shania stays, Daniel or Anika still go. Although Shania wasn't the target for this round, if a girly pop had to go, it was going to be Shania because of her closeness to Daniel and Anika, and they couldn't afford to leave all 3 of them in the game. This final 3 idea between Ty, Claudia, and Renee was being thrown out there because Claudia wanted to get on the Ty train, use him as a comp soldier, and get him to use whatever power he won to benefit her. Big mistake, as Ty is going to win his 6th competition in the double eviction POV competition. Ball game. It was this competition where they had to run back and forth, smashing pots to find some puzzle pieces, then assemble a puzzle. Ty dusted them in this competition so badly that no one even got started on the puzzle section. So this POV win gave Ty all of the power in this double eviction. He could either leave noms the same and see someone from that pair leave no matter what, or he could use the POV, and because of how the numbers were in what is now a 6-player game, he could take a crown member off the block and force Claudia to put up one of her girly pops. And with 3 votes, 1 crown that would vote to save the crown, 1 girly pop that would vote to save a girly pop, and then there's just Ty in the middle, this means that he could decide who went home. That would give him the most agency in this decision. So that's exactly what happened. He told Claudia that Shania has to go. This was because Ty wanted the final 3, but he didn't want Shania to be in the final 4 because he felt like Shania wasn't a number for him. Ty said that she doesn't listen. So I'm assuming that Ty was talking about when she messed up his HOH week by using the POV on Renee and putting him in a tough spot with the crown, having to nominate Jonathan. Also, Ty said that Shania had been so protected by the girly pops and that she'd get chosen over him, and he didn't want to go to the end with all 3 girly pops. So Ty campaigned to Claudia, and the ball was already rolling in her direction, making it easier to put Shania up on the block. Although it wasn't a decision that Claudia wanted to make. Like I said, this was not the plan for this double eviction. This was evident as the girly pops started crying when they realized the inevitable. So Ty used the POV on Anika, which ended up being a positive for him in terms of what happened in the next round. And Claudia got rid of one of her numbers in Shania to go forward in the game with Ty and lock in that Ty, Renee, and Claudia final 3, at least in her mind. And yeah, that was double eviction night. It's so impressive how Ty was able to avoid the block after being a big target for the past few weeks. Also, I like the chain reaction. Ty gained the trust of Claudia, which led to her not putting Ty on the block, which allowed Ty to completely run her HOH because of how the POV works with such a small number of 6 and because of where the alliances were. He was able to insert himself in the middle of the girly pops, Anika, and Daniel, and just have all options available and just completely hijack this HOH and set up his ideal final 5. And I liked his choice to go to the final 5 in the middle of 2 pairs, and I'll explain that in the next week. But this was for sure a big move that showed off how Ty's social game opened up his strategic game, opened up strategic opportunities, and Ty made the right play. Ty dismantled a girly pops alliance that was running the game. They were hotter than fish grease, as Eric Collins would say. 4 comp wins in 5 rounds of gameplay. So Ty really brought him back down to earth, and he got out Shania, someone that wasn't in his final 3, and from his perspective, she was an obstacle in his way of going further in the game, because you just never want to go to the final 4 with a full-on alliance that's been working together for weeks. And in the Jonathan round, they showed that they were literally willing to draw a line in the sand and divide the house for each other. Also, Shania was protected by Daniel and Anika, and she had a final 4 with them, Claudia, and herself. Like, she was playing a good game. Ty was able to evict the best positioned player in the house, and like I said, that opened up the game for Ty and put him in the best position in the middle of 2 pairs. Oh yeah, and to put some hot sauce on it, I want to note how impressive it was that a one-man army was able to keep pace with a 3-person girly pops alliance in terms of comp wins. In every round they won a comp, Ty also won a comp. Beast mode. Now it's time for week 9. Anika won an HOH comp that lasted for 17 seconds. Yep, it was a comp where they had to balance a statue on a lever and everyone flamed out quickly, so Anika won. But this is actually a positive for Ty. First off, I talked about Ty using the POV on Anika in the double. This was good for Ty's game because he can say that every time Anika was on the block and he was able to save her, he did. The only time that he couldn't was when he was on the block next to her on Renee's HOH week and had to use the POV on himself. This POV usage in the double was used as a reason in Anika's nomination speech for why she couldn't nominate Ty, so big dubs for him. She left Ty off the block in hopes that he'd repay her by using the POV for what she wanted if Ty won the POV. Big mistake, because just like in the double eviction with Claudia, Ty just told Anika what she wanted to hear to avoid the block. Another reason why Ty ultimately avoided the block was because of his amazing position. So I talked about Ty being in the middle of 2 pairs, and this is where that's really going to come into play. Both of these sides don't want to go into the final 4 in the minority, so they need Ty to pick their side. Jimmy Butler, you need me, you can't win without me type settings. And like I said, because of some conversations, Anika thought that Ty was on board. So Claudia and Renee went up on the block, and Ty won the POV, his 7th comp win of the season. Also, this win was able to clinch Ty the record for the most single season POV wins in Big Brother Canada history. Ball game. It was another gather the puzzle pieces and assemble the puzzle, this time incorporating some memory. And this was a huge deal because a narrative made by talking heads was that memory comps were Ty's biggest weakness in the game, and his lack of memorization would lose him a days comp or part 3 of the final HOH. We'll see, but he won this variety comp that incorporated both physical and mental. Ty didn't desperately need to win power this week like in previous weeks, but the game can change at any point, and he was a comp beast and looked at as a threat. So it's good that he secured his safety so no funny business could happen. And this put Ty in a similar position to the one that he was in on double eviction night. Leave noms the same and a girly pop goes either way, but it's pretty obvious that Ty is a chaos merchant, so he's gonna go against Anika's wishes and use the POV on Claudia to lock in with her. And this was after Anika thought that she was good with Ty and could control him and tell him not to use the POV. This was after she called Claudia brainless for leaving Ty off the block in the double. So Anika was so upset that she got played just like Claudia, just like the person that she called brainless, which would mean that Anika is also brainless. So I see why the waterworks came out and why this was such a big deal for Anika. And because of Ty's use of the POV, that forced Anika's #1 ally in Daniel up on the block. This means that Ty burned bridges with both of them and committed to moving forward with Claudia, the two best competition players in the house. Also, because of how the house dynamics were, Ty was basically the deciding vote. Again, he could either vote with Claudia to save Renee and evict Daniel, or he could save Daniel by voting against Renee to cancel out Claudia's vote to keep Renee, sending it to a tiebreaker where Anika would always keep Daniel. Whatever happened here was Ty's call, Ty's decision, going on his resume. He created this situation. So I like that he evicted Renee here. Now in post-game coverage, Ty revealed that he was actually down for the Ty, Renee, and Claudia final 3 until he found out from Anika that Renee was throwing his name around in the event that Claudia won and took herself off the block, meaning that Ty goes up next to Renee, and Renee asked Anika if she really wanted to leave a showmance, power couple, whatever. She asked if she really wanted to leave them in the game. This conversation, getting back to Ty, caused Ty to abandon the final 3 and evict Renee, with Claudia casting a sympathy vote for Renee, then getting right back to working with Ty in the next round. I like this decision more than going with the final 3. Now, Ty is in the game with Claudia, someone that can win comps to keep him safe because he locked in with her by using the POV on her. And now Claudia has no more friends to turn to, and she doesn't want to go to the final 3 with Daniel and Anika because they'll take each other to the final 2 if they won final HOH. So with Renee out of the game, Claudia basically had to get Ty to the final 3, which had a good chance of happening because she was the second comp beast on this season. This wasn't the primary reason why Renee was taken out. Like I said, it was mainly because she had Ty's name in her mouth. But Claudia having no friends left was a good secondary effect that Ty actually used to benefit his game, so I'm giving him credit for that. Now with that eviction chaos out of the way, I have to go back and talk about the auction and the jury segment that happened a little bit before Renee's eviction. So throughout the season, the players were earning Wendy's points for avoiding eviction while on the block, winning comps, surviving each week, stuff like that. Also, evicted players had to give their Wendy's points to a player still left in the game. Kuzi had the most Wendy's points in the game, and at the time of her eviction, she was very pro Ty. So that could only mean that she gave her Wendy's points to Ty, giving him the most Wendy's points to spend at this Survivor style auction. That's social game. That's relationship building. That's jury management, and it really paid off for Ty. In this auction, Ty was able to get a big tray of Wendy's, and he still had enough to get a strategy session with Tyshawn, winner of BBCAN 9, and a 1-minute plea to the jury, which no one bidded against him for those two. They knew that Ty had all of the points. At this point, Ty's just completely running the game like it's his game. Now, I will say the strategy session was a bust. In the edit, Tyshawn was only shown giving Ty 2 nuggets of advice, and they were very cookie cutter, generalized answers. It's perfect that Tyshawn wasn't able to spill any important game information, as that would go against the spirit of the game, but this strategy session was underwhelming, but at least it's better than nothing. Also, after seeing the double eviction results, Dan S seemed to fully get on the Ty train right here. So right now, Ty has Dan S and Kuzi as supporters. But that's it for now, as Santina said that she didn't care about Ty's comp wins. He's playing a dirty game and he has to show a bit more loyalty to get her vote. And Hope, Jonathan, and Shania didn't give their thoughts. Also, circling back to Renee's eviction, speaking of jury management, Renee said that she was disappointed in Claudia for not trying harder to save her and believes that Claudia misplayed. Something to consider for jury management. Now, it's time to talk about the final week of the game. Week 10, 3 more rounds to go. Last round, Ty made enemies with Anika and Daniel because of the POV maneuver, and his game could have ended this week with the right combination of comp wins. But also, I want to note that even if Ty went on a losing streak and just went winless in the final 4, Claudia wanted him in the final 2. So at least he had someone playing for him, and if she won the POV, Ty would most likely make it to the final 3. The final 4 was the battle of the pairs, and the showman swept the competitions for this week like they talked about last week. Ty won the day's comp HOH, just a straight up quiz, which was supposed to be such a big hurdle for him because he's just a jock athlete that can only win physical comps. Well, this shuts that narrative down because in 2 out of the last 3 quizzes that he's been a part of, he's finished with a passing grade. So far, more times than not, Ty has scored high on a quiz. And actually in this one, Ty went 6 for 6, like his name was Michael Jeffrey Jordan. It's like in the Last Dance documentary when they were saying that Clyde Drexler is Michael Jordan, but he can shoot threes. And Jordan was like, oh really? They're saying I can't shoot? Then Jordan went out there and outshot Drexler from the 3-point line so badly and won the championship. That's what this moment reminded me of. They poked the bear like their name was Dylan Brooks and they got their finger bit off. Ty went out there and dominated this comp so much that they had to end the comp early. There were 7 questions, just like all of the quizzes, but Ty got 6 of them right in a row while the others missed some. This guy's a unicorn. Kristaps Porzingis settings, like he's got a little bit of everything in his bag. So he clinched the final 3 and had a stress-free week because he will be in the finale of Big Brother Canada 11. He also clinched the record for the most comp wins in a single season in Big Brother Canada history at 8 comp wins. Ball game. Before nominations, I actually want to talk about something that I didn't like. They basically had this BBCAN highlight award show where fans could vote on their favorite moments from the season in a certain category. They'd show the top 2 moments to the players, then crown one as a winner. I didn't like this because everyone wasn't there for every moment, and I don't like that the final 4 got to see stuff that they weren't necessarily there for. Also, the Zach and Kuzi fight got brought up, and I didn't like that because that was such a dramatic day that happened weeks ago, and Ty had advanced his reputation so much since that day, so I didn't like that they were reminded of that. Also, Ty didn't win any awards. None of the moments that he was the headline of won, so I didn't like that the players could theorize about each other's outside reception based on these moments, and that could potentially be brought into the game. Just pointing this out because after seeing some of those old memories, especially ones with Zach, that led to an argument between Claudia and Ty about loyalty, to which she got frustrated and left the room. This probably doesn't happen without that dumb award show, but it happened, and Ty mismanaged this situation going into a final 3 where no one's taking him to the final 2 except for Claudia. Daniel's been sort of plotting against Ty for the past 2 rounds, trying to get him out subtly as a backup plan, like in a if it happens type of way. But this week, he basically said that Ty has won too many comps to be taken to the final 2. And Anika is a complete wild card, so right now, Ty only has Claudia if he can't win the final HOH himself. They eventually got on good terms again, but he can't get into arguments like that. It's bad gameplay. So Ty's noms are going to be Claudia and Daniel, and although noms really don't matter, at least it was an attempt at good jury management with Anika, to which Ty explained in the DR saying that he wants to stay on Anika's good side if she wins the POV. And Ty wants to remind Anika that he saved her 2 times and didn't nominate her this time, so that's something to go into jury with. With Nom set, it's just about the POV and crafting his final 3. Like I said, the showman swept the comps, so Claudia won the POV and got the sole vote to evict. Ty didn't really have a strong preference and didn't push too hard, but he was concerned that Anika would take Claudia to the final 2, and Claudia thought the opposite, that Anika wasn't taking her to the final 2. So Claudia evicted Anika and they both got what they wanted. But this was a bad move because Daniel's just a better player than Anika. Better at comps, more win equity, and like I said, he wasn't taking Ty to the end. I feel like if they evicted Daniel here and kept Anika, then they set themselves up perfectly to not only dominate the final 3 HOH comps against Anika, but on the off chance that they lose to Anika in part 3 or take her to the end, they both win over her. Whereas with Daniel, both of them probably lose to him, which is what I heard in post-game interviews. It's not a guaranteed win, but from what I heard, he probably would have beat Claudia and he had a good amount of votes against Ty, so at that point, anything can happen. So I don't like this decision to get rid of Anika, but if Ty and Claudia sweep the final HOH and hold Daniel winless, then this doesn't really matter a ton. Before I get to the final HOH, I have to talk about jury stuff. So when Anika left, she said that she's not impressed with Claudia's game. She held on to Ty way too much and betrayed all of her alliances. But that's not really a slam dunk for Ty, as she said that he only wins comps and has no social game. So that's a solid Daniel vote. But at the very least, from exit interviews, it sounded like Ty would get Anika's vote next to Claudia. Then in the jury segment, they showed Shania being upset that Claudia chose Ty over her after battling with Ty ever since the girly pops got formed. But the good has to be balanced out with some bad, as the jury finally got Ty's plea to the jury, saying that he hopes that they can judge him based on his strength, courage, resilience, intellect, and poise, which got some negative reactions, some whatever reactions. Shania said that he didn't really say much. Renee said that those don't have to be the only traits that they vote based on. Dan and Shania mocked him, saying that they forgot the points that he listed, and Dan was like, oh, was one of them saying ball game all the time? Jonathan said that Ty has never shown the main thing that he's looking for in a winner, which is humility. Santina said that before the video, she wanted to see Ty win, which in the last jury segment, she was on the fence, but now she's back on the fence and feeling like she's not going to vote for Ty. Months later, I'm still confused about what was so bad about this video. Like, it seemed normal. It seemed good. I'm still confused on if this was even a genuine segment or just a joke or something, because I know that they have to edit jury segments to hide an obvious winner and make it seem like everyone has a chance. So I really have no idea on if this was an actual genuine segment or they're just exaggerating. But based on what the show is showing right now, the state of the jury right now, it's not looking good for Ty. Now it's time for the final 3 round. In the first part of the HOH comp, they had to go back and forth trying to stack 30 coins on a platform that spun every time they moved. Despite Ty's win in the days comp, the narrative was still that Ty's best shot at winning a part of the final HOH was part 1, because part 2 and part 3 involved days and memory. Unfortunately for Ty, he lost this comp to Claudia, meaning that all of the pressure was on him to win the second part. Also, something to note. Usually part 1 and part 2 of the final HOH comp aren't used as full-on comps that can be used as part of a resume. Like, no one's really moved about someone winning a part of a competition. But counting this part and the final 4 POV, this is the first time that Ty has lost back-to-back competitions since he started his wild run in week 6. That's pretty amazing. So now Ty had to face off against Daniel in a skill and trivia comp based on events that happened in the house, like how many times someone was on the block, how many times someone was a replacement nominee, stuff like that. So Ty had to beat the fraud allegations once again, beat those only wins physical comps allegations. Ty won this comp with around 16-17 minutes to spare. And there's no need to add suspense and beat around the bush. This locked Daniel out of the final two. He had no way to get there after he lost these comps. Ty and Claudia had a final two. They were taking each other no matter what, so that's the end of Daniel's story. Next is the jury roundtable with Kevin Jacobs, and I'm not going to deep dive into it. It's not too important because they edited it to be equal to make it seem like everyone had a chance. So what happened was, for each of the final three, they showed someone talking about their game positively, then one or two folks talking about their game negatively. But just to document everything, the only thing that really changed was that Anika was now seemingly more anti-Ty than anti-Claudia, but I know how this is going to end, so I'm not going to waste any more time talking about this terribly misleading jury roundtable. Next is part 3 of the final HOH comp. It's just questions about the jury, just a straight up quiz. Ty got 2 questions wrong, while Claudia got 1 question wrong, meaning that Claudia won the final HOH. Now, I have to talk about Ty's results in quiz competitions. There were 5 straight up quiz competitions. Ty competed in 4 of them. His scores were 6 for 7, 3 for 7, 6 for 6, then 5 for 7 in part 3 of the final HOH competition. This means that Ty's average grade in quiz comps is 75%, a passing grade, and on average, he's at least getting 5 questions right in these quizzes. On Big Brother Canada 11, Ty was an average quiz taker. The biggest weakness in Ty's competition game was something that he was average at, making Ty a well-rounded comp beast on this season. Getting back to the final 3 HOH, Claudia won, meaning that Ty would have to face the eviction night block for the first time this season, which is very impressive. Out of 12 rounds with competitions in them, which is everything but the final 2, Ty was safe for 8 of them. Unevictable. There was only one time in this game where someone could say the words, "I vote to evict Ty," which was at this final 3 round. That's very impressive. And even though Ty didn't win this final HOH, he and Claudia were a solid final 2. It didn't matter at all if Ty lost, because he got in a position where his final 2 was a mini comp beast that would also take him to the end. This was something that Ty set up in the final 6 when he got rid of Shania in the double, and in the final 5 when he used the POV to save Claudia from definitely getting evicted there and getting rid of Renee, leaving Claudia with really no other option than to take Ty to the end. So Claudia got rid of Daniel, and now it's final 2 time. In the jury questions, Ty was able to answer the questions well, showing how aware he was of the house structure, saying that he knew about the crown and the girly pops before they really burst onto the scene. Ty was also able to show that he wasn't just out there winning comps, winning carnival games, and that's it. Ty talked about how he used the power that he got from the comp wins to control the game from the final 6 on. That strategic game. He also talked about how he was able to avoid the block in back-to-back rounds after being the house target for a while. That's social game, and the receipts are there when Ty told Claudia what she wanted to hear to keep him off the block. Same with Anika. That's smart social play. Ty even explained in exit interviews that the more honest he was, the more trouble he got himself into, so he had to lie. This is legitimate, intentional gameplay. Ty dominated these jury questions as he was able to speak to the less obvious aspects of his game and just came off as a confident person that had a game plan that made moves with intention. Ty showed that he had more control over his game than Claudia. Ty even showed that he knew a little bit more about the house dynamics than he was given credit for, while Claudia took a beating in the jury questions. Her answers lacked confidence, and something that was being critiqued heavily was her gameplay in the double eviction and the round after that. Claudia didn't intend for Shania to go home on her HOH, but she said that her hand was forced, basically admitting that she got outplayed in that round, which is a bad look. Also, her loyalty was called into question when she ditched the girly pops to work with Ty, which was a big deal because this was supposed to be a female-dominated season. There were some quits, Amal and Vanessa, so that's something to take into account. But it took until day 42 for a woman to finally be voted out of this game. Also, at the final 9, the women had a 6-3 advantage. Like, a woman was set up to win this season. They had it made. But Claudia traded all of that in for Ty, which was a very unpopular decision. Like, just about all of Claudia's questions to some extent were about why she jumped ship and betrayed her girly pops, betrayed her final 4 with Anika, Daniel, and Shania when she already had a good game and didn't really need Ty if she just stuck with her alliances. I remember when Anika asked her version of this question to Claudia, and all throughout Claudia's answer, Anika was nodding her head no, clearly not going to vote for her, which is why I didn't trust in the jury segments 100%. But yeah, by the end of it all, Claudia's narrative and reception by the jury was that she was a frantic player with no game plan that just gave up her game for Ty. And by the end of the questions and speeches, it was obvious that Ty's game was just better. Ty wins Big Brother Canada 11 in an 8-1 jury vote, getting every vote but Shania's vote. And with that, Ty became the greatest winner in Big Brother history. This guy had the most to overcome to get his win. If I'm being honest, at the beginning of the game, I didn't think that Ty was winning. I didn't think that he would become a literal legend and win the most comps in BBCAN history in a single season. First off, Ty is coming into something that's labeled as a social game as an introvert, so there's that. Also, I remember in the beginning, Claudia, someone that would go on to be his #1 ally, said that it might be hard to work with him because he's barely giving out information. It really looked like he was going to get left behind with the guys. Then Ty got screwed over by Lettergate and had his #1 ally self-evict in round 3 of the game. And from there, Ty was at the bottom of the house and excluded from alliances for a while as everyone wanted him out. And even when he was winning comps week after week after week, he was just winning safety. He wasn't masterminding any votes or anything. It really looked like Ty could flame out at any moment until that crazy double eviction where he combined all 3 of the social, strategic, and physical aspects of the game to make the biggest move of the game by getting Shania out and really shifting the game in his favor. And from that point on, he was the front runner to win, just completely dominating the end game and only having 1 vote cast against him in this entire season, which was Shania's jury vote. Impressive. And Ty won this game as a comp beast, which is amazing. Comp beasts always play on the hardest difficulty settings. Sometimes juries don't respect comp beasts as it's easy to craft a narrative that all they're good at is winning carnival games, when it might be true that comps were the strongest aspect of Ty's game, but that doesn't automatically make every other aspect of his game bad or non-existent, which is the narrative that the comp beast label enforces. They're only good at comps. They're only winning comps. That's it. Even with the knowledge of juries not always respecting comp beasts are almost always a target regardless of win equity. It is the hardest style of game to play. And the fact that for a good amount of these comps, Ty went against a house of folks that wouldn't use the HOH or POV in his favor had they won, and still dusted them and was safe and unevictable for 8 out of 12 rounds that had competitions in them, which is everything excluding the final 2, that's clutch. That's legendary, regardless of what game it's supposed to be. Speaking of social game, I want to relate this to myself. I'm not only an introvert, I'm an antisocial person. I've had struggles and barriers in my life that kept me from being a more sociable person. I believe that being a sociable person comes with a lot of privilege. So whenever I hear that games like Survivor and Big Brother are social games, that just feels so exclusionary. There's folks that literally aren't able to play the social game just because of the person that they are. Like I said, being that social person that can just connect with everyone, that is a privilege, and some folks didn't grow up in environments that inspired that. I'm never going to exclude someone because they're not the most social person and they play a comp heavy game. Because like I said, some folks can't play the social game as well as others because of social factors and influences that are outside of their control. So just like the person that's playing the social game is playing to their strengths, the person that's winning comps is also playing to their strengths, and I respect it. Especially since the game isn't exclusively a social game where that's the only way to advance forward in the game and win the game. That's just not true at all. When I started getting into reality competition shows and actually covering them, every year the winner was just this social butterfly of a person with this big personality that everyone loved, which is good for them, but I just can't relate to that. Ty winning this game broke down barriers. Like, yeah, just because his win is different, it's not the social heavy style of game that gets so much praise. That doesn't mean that it was a bad win. It was actually one of the most dominant wins in Big Brother history. Ty's win just gave me closure and showed that introverts can play a more individualistic style of game and still win rather handily at that. Ty was such a fun player that always brought entertainment and played a game that was true to himself, that could inspire others. Add in the fact that on top of that, he overcame the most adversity and had the best triumph story in all of Big Brother. All of that makes Ty McDonald the greatest winner in Big Brother history. I'm really thankful that I got a chance to watch his game again and this season overall. By the way, this was such a fun cast. Like, there's not a person that I dislike on here, so they definitely deserved some live feeds. They were amazing. But yeah, I really enjoyed watching this chaotic season again. It was amazing. And yeah, that's about it.